what is interesting about this unnatural lust there, the Greek, is if you translate it literally, it means they're going after different flesh. So who were the men they were going after in Sodom? Who were they? They were angels, remember? They were angels sent there by God. That's the different flesh. I don't know. But it is interesting, right, that the different flesh there would be connected to to men who were angels. All right. So, all right, now Leviticus. Leviticus is often used in this debate because of Leviticus 20:13 and 18:22. If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall be put to death. Their blood is upon them. Or in Leviticus 18, you shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. So, an abomination is, dealt with uncleanness, impurity, anything that was ritually forbidden. It's a cultural taboo. So, what I did was just, for the next several pages, you'll see all the things in the Old Testament that are called an abomination. And so you'll find all kinds of interesting things there, such as anything that lives in water without fins or scales, which I think means oysters, scallops, and shrimp. And animals without paws or with paws, which I think means pork. And abominations are charging interest on loans. You'll find that in there. Abominations are tattoos. So anyway, so I just included those in that handout to let you see what are called abominations in the Old Testament, and which I think sort of speaks for itself. So those are the primary texts that are brought up in the discussion among Christians about how we see the Bible in the homosexual debate. And in my mind, it's very helpful for me to look at these and try to understand, what the context was, their understanding of, or their really lack of understanding for what we understand as committed relationships between gay people or straight people, and and their purpose of growing in love in Christ. So, this is how I deal with the text, and am comfortable with my position as a result of that. So I'm ready to answer any questions you have.
Remember, you have to have the microphone set.
Go ahead, Kim. Hold on, I think.
Yeah, we need to have the microphone.
This is these are on. All of these sessions are on our webpage, by the way.
We don't have the creation text in here. Is there a specific reason for that? That's my first question. Created a male and female, and the two shall become
I did those
one.
last week.
Because you covered that last week?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I've tried to look at it both ways and see both sides of it, and I do understand where you're coming from there. But my question becomes, how do we handle incest when we say that we can have loving, committed, incestual relationships? 1 Corinthians 5. Wasn't that what was being addressed there? So what do you say, using the same analogy, that they're loving and they're committed? Do we allow them the same well, obviously, they could get married. There could be loving, committed, incestual relationships, be it male-male, female-female, or male-female. That's where I'm having a problem sometimes. Is that a fair question?
Yeah, that's a fair question, yeah. Well, my understanding of incest is it's very unhealthy, and that that it is it would not be healthy for any family to be involved in incestuous relationships. So I just would say that's a very different thing than gay and lesbian people who are Christians, who are trying to follow Christ, who are trying to have a family, who are trying to be a family, who are trying to be a part of our culture in the way that the rest of us are. And I don't know what, I'm sure that the psychological damage in an incestuous relationship must be awful, right? I don't know.
Isn't that true, where you read the same thing that's unhealthy on the other side? I read that it's unhealthy. I mean, it's unhealthy for families, bless their hearts, they're having to deal with it.
Right. Well, I've known plenty of gay couples who were healthy. I mean, I've got people in my family who were, and I think that in the end, what we're asking for is we're asking for the same ethics we'd have for heterosexuals as we have for homosexuals. Same ethics, and what would be good for heterosexuals would be good for homosexuals. The same things that we would see as out of bounds for heterosexuals would be out of bounds for homosexuals. That's the incest just seems to me to be like polygamy. Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment, going back to...
Hang on just a sec, because we're going to have these on the web, so we have to be able to hear you.
Going back to the biblical references, in the way I read the references in the Bible, there's a distinction between people who are homosexual, and i.e. they prefer having sex with the same sex person, and the incidences that are referred to in the Bible that are sex between two men, but not necessarily two men who are gay. Most of the instances in the Bible that are referred to were about sex that was violent, cruel, demeaning, controlling. It was done to prisoners. It was done to slaves. It was done to people that they wanted to embarrass and demean, captives in a war. Much like in prisons today, it was violent. It had nothing to do with love and commitment to another person. They were acts perpetrated on other people.
I'll say yes.
We don't know what Chief Justice Roberts will do in this opinion that will be forthcoming, but in a secular sense, he asked the following question, and I'm not sure the names are correct, but he says, suppose Bill loves Mary and Bill loves John. Bill can marry Mary, but Bill can't marry John. That is inherently unfair, and our secular society, which would like to have Christian principles supporting it, would say, yes, that's unfair. The same-sex right and the other sex right should be both equally available.
Well, yeah, and that's that we'll see what the Supreme Court does.
It's interesting to me that we pick out certain words and ignore others, like adulterers and thieves and greedy drunkards and robbers. You know, why do we differentiate evildoers or wrongdoers and ignore those others?
I don't know. What would you say? Howard, what would you say?
You got another back there?
Yes.
It seems to me that what we're talking about is a redefinition of marriage. Marriage is not a civil institution. Marriage was instituted by God. In Genesis, the first thing he does is create a man, and he saw that he wasn't complete, so he created a female to be his helpmate. It's a complementary relationship. You know, we can struggle and give all of these biblical references, but exactly the same ones that you gave are the same ones used against gay marriage in the church. So, you know, you've got 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So what you have to do here is go back to what I've been studying the Bible for years. I've been in a bunch of charisma classes, disciple Bible study, Bethel Bible studies. And when God, all the things that I see, he clearly meant marriage to be between a man and a woman. He defined marriage. We don't have that prerogative. You know, it says, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. If people are in a loving homosexual relationship, they can have a civil marriage. The church doesn't have to marry homosexual people. God defined marriage as between a man and a woman.
Can I reply to that?
Yeah, Dahl had talked about that last week. Let us hand this back to Dahl.
What if it's too close? Nancy, take the wheel over there. Last week we talked a lot about the evolution of marriage, and we talked a lot about, we studied the passages from Genesis. If you missed that conversation, I do hope you'll go on the web and watch the video. I hear your point. However, there is no marriage word used in Genesis at all. We talk about the development of 2 human beings that are created by God, and they are different, and they have different responsibilities to care for the earth. They have dominion over the earth. Marriage actually began in the Old Testament as an alliance between 2 tribes, where women were given as property. Marriage does not become a sacrament in the church until the 1600s. So just keep that in mind as you're studying, that there is an evolution of marriage as a civil union for everyone, as well as when it becomes sacred in the church in the eyes of God. So as we study and look at that, just pay attention to those things and wrap your head around the big picture of how culture is changing. You know, I got really fired up last week about how these women, Sid uses the example today, 2 daughters given to be raped instead of these men. Where's the justice in that? So just remember, our society and our culture are evolving and changing, and we have standards. You wouldn't want your women raped today instead of the guests in your home, right? So I hope you'll study the culture and the history as well, and look at the original text from the Hebrew and the definitions.
I think that's a false choice. Nobody would want either one of those situations to happen. If you're suggesting that one was okay and the other wasn't back then, I don't think that's correct.
I didn't say that either was okay. I didn't say that either was okay.
Yes. Well.
I recall a passage that I don't think is in here in the Bible, but if I can paraphrase it as best I remember, there was condemnation somewhere in there of a man lying with a man and spilling his seed on the ground. And the whole thing was about they needed people. They needed people back then, and it was treated as if it was a waste to spill the semen on the ground rather to an impregnated female to get more people.
Right.
So I was understanding it as that, rather than, it being a sin simply because the two were together. And secondly, I wish I had a Bible translation that had the word love in it as they used in the Greek, because there's so many different words for love that we all round into one word. And when it says love the Lord your God and love your neighbor and so on, I'd like to know always which love they're referring to, because for them, there were so many different definitions for love, and we lose that point when we use the same word throughout the Bible and apply it to all different situations. The love of a child, the love of a spouse, the love of God, etc.
Let me say one other thing. I think I may have said this last week, and that is that I was a part of the General Assembly last summer, and happened to be, I was randomly selected to be a part of the committee that dealt with all of this, the same gender relationships, and so when I went to General Assembly, I was, my thought was, okay. Let's give the church the power to bless these unions, but let's don't call it a marriage. All right, let's call it something else. And but while I was there for almost 2 weeks, and sitting in and listening to the conversations and having people come in and to the committee. The committee was huge; it had 60 people, I think. What became apparent to me was that. For our brothers and sisters who are Christian and members of our churches, to call it anything else would make them a second-class citizen in the church. And so, for me, that was powerful. And to hear it be sort of like the days of segregation where we would say separate but equal. That's the way that Christians who are Presbyterians felt about it being called something else other than marriage, that it makes them, in the eyes of the community, for us, the Presbyterian community, makes them second-class citizens.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
I'll come so that. Back on the first part of May, there was a meeting of the College of Elders about this subject, and I went to that meeting resolute to keep my mouth shut and listen for once. And unusual. There were 4 or 5 very bold people who stood up and voiced their concerns about the direction this was taking. And later, I was sort of tortured by the fact that I did not say anything in that meeting. And so I sent a letter out to those people affirming their courage to stand up and speak, I think, against the trend. I was raised a Southern Baptist. I was raised with very traditional views. I believe that the Bible, the truth, the inconvenient truths of the Bible should not capitulate to popular culture. But I have done a complete 180 on this issue, and I've brought copies of the letter to share with anyone who's interested, not enough copies for those who are here. But it's not intended to try to convince anybody of anything, to change your mind, but it's another testimony of the road to a different understanding than the one that I started with.
I don't really want to be on the video, but I just wanted to say, for the last 10, 12 years,
I've been reading my Bible all the way through. Like I do the Bible in 1 year, daily Bible readings, and that has led to a change in the way I think about things, at least, especially with issues like this where, in my mind, you really can't know. I mean, there are good arguments, good theological arguments on both sides of this issue, and I can't know the answer to that because, for one thing, God doesn't talk to me about that. I'm not homosexual, so He's not going to tell me that oh, this is okay or this is wrong. But when I read my Bible, I see two main themes through the whole thing. One is love everyone, and the other is do not judge. And in my mind, if we can't know for absolute sure the answer, then we need to be as inclusive as possible. To make any decision other than the decision that the College of Elders made would be to turn people away from our church, and I don't think that's the purpose of Christ.
All right, well, thank you, thank all of you, and thank you for coming for the last 3 weeks. This has been healthy and just as a comment to that, like I said, I've been dealing with this since I was in seminary, and the truth is, I was in a different place on this, and somewhere along the way, I crossed to a different side. And the truth is I've had gay people in all my churches, and who were faithful, who were, they just wanted to be Christians and members like the rest of us. And I've had gay couples who didn't have the option to be married, who were part of congregations, and some in this congregation. What I appreciate is the way that we've gone about this at First Pres, beginning with the session in December and the conversations and study that we had until we made the decision in May. And then the conversations we had at the in-house gatherings and at the College of Elders meetings, and now for the last 3 weeks here. As we've said from the beginning, our intent is not to try to change anybody's mind. The session made a decision that, like all decisions, that they believed was the best decision, informed as they discerned what they thought God was asking of us. And, and I'm proud of the process in particular. And I told the session, Neil and Dawn and I all said, if we're asked by our members who are gay to do same-gender weddings, we will say yes. And unless we think there's something wrong in the relationship, which we have the right to say no for any heterosexual relationship. And so, but I have appreciated the spirit by which we've gone about it. And so I applaud First Presbyterian because there are people with many different views about this, and we try to be fair and listen and be respectful to each other. And to me, that's really the most important issue of all, of what it means to be the body of Christ, even as we disagree. If you're married or have ever been married, you know that two people will not always want to agree with things, right? And so when you put 3,000 people together, although Kathy always agrees with me, or I always agree with Kathy. And so, we're not going to all agree on this, and we're not going to agree on a lot of different things. But my hope is that we don't have to think the same or believe the same in order to be the body of Christ, First Presbyterian Church here in Greensboro. That will be our testament, I think. That'll be what says, this is the character of this congregation. Everybody didn't agree with this, but we went on and honored each other. So I applaud you as a congregation for the spirit that has surrounded all of this today. So, thank you.